This is my review of Bandai's DX Chogokin YF-30 Chronos, a new Valkyrie design that debuted in the PlayStation 3 game Macross 30, and you can see it's even a part of the logo. So, like all of these big new DX Chogokin Valkyries, this is a very large toy. It's over a foot long, and as you can see is clearly larger than a video game case. Alright, so let's kind of talk about stuff that's on top. Again, very nice paint job. You have lots of tampograph markings including SMS logos, tons of little nose steps along the edge of the wing, and other things like tiny warning markings near the cockpit. And again, canopy comes up. Inside there's a tiny Leon, or Rion Sakaki, main character of the game. He's actually comes in the cockpit when you get the toy, so you don't actually have to put him in yourself. He's a little loose in there, but you can probably like have him sit on something to keep him in place. The tail fins move because they do in the video game, and this is high-speed mode right there. There's actually kind of a soft detent as you're moving these little soft clicks, but you kind of have to fiddle with them to get them in the right position. So we're going to just flip it over and talk about what's on the underside. You've got full set of landing gear and also places to put underwing stores. You don't actually get this stuff with the toy. These come from the YF-171 armor parts set. And the thing didn't actually have any underwing missiles in the game, so this is just kind of a nice Easter egg or room for future expansion, I don't know. So with the landing gear, what you can do is you just flip it down. Again, it's all die-cast landing gear. And you just push the doors in. You notice that all these doors actually have a little slide out joint, so they sit nice and flush. Now we're getting the nose wheel in. It will not go down because this is in the way. So what you need to do is just take this whole back thing here, and you can just slide it back a bit, and then you just fold the landing gear down. I notice with these nose wheels, again, because it has like sliding joint, this part here is really tough to get up, the little sliding joint. And you'll kind of notice as I push it down. Yeah, it's got a very strong click. So be careful with that. You shouldn't try to like rip these things out, but just be aware it is kind of tough to get them out. Alright, before I talk a little more about what this whole thing is, I just want to show the display stand setup real quick. Pretty basic, you know. You got this display stand with every single new Bandai Valkyrie, and you just have the little clips here just go into the bottom of the groin where the hip joints are, and that should just all rest in there, and now it's at the nice safe and steady gate guard angle, and it looks alright. Again, boring but functional display stand. Okay, so to kind of get a little bit more into this whole area, this thing here, I'm going to take the gun pod off, and you can see there's actually a little strut in the back and the handle that just snaps into this thing. This is the missile pod, or weapon container as they refer to it in the game. And the whole deal with this thing is that it is actually just on an articulated arm, and as the name implies, it's just a pod full of missiles, and there are little doors you can open up. All these doors open up and there are missiles inside. Just be careful, some of the edges of these doors are kind of sharp and they can dig into your fingernail. A little fleshy part underneath your fingernail, I should say. So again, this thing kind of just comes in and out pretty easily, and you can display the YF-30 with the missile pod up, as in the game. It'll do this when you switch missiles, so it's kind of nice that you can do it on the toy. I wish you could just do it without actually having to take this part off, but I think what they figured is because Kawamori said it's like, oh, you can replace this thing with like beam cannon or troop transport pod, that they would just build in this functionality to the toy, and maybe they're leaving room for future expansion, I don't know. But anyway, that's how it kind of works here. Again, in the game, all you get is this thing. It doesn't even have super parts in the game, although someone was checking around the game data and they said it's like, oh yeah, there's supposed to be a YF-30 with super parts, and there seems to be like extra holes for stuff that doesn't really do anything on the toy, so we will see later on. And obviously you get the removable intake cover thing because I left them off here. Alright, so we're gonna do a quick cut and we'll talk about transferring this into the gear walk mode. Alright, let's talk about transforming the YF-30 into gearwalk mode. Overall, the transformation is fairly straightforward, with a couple of minor hiccups. When going out of fighter mode, going back is kind of another story, because you kind of have to make sure everything is all lined up. You can leave this on, but I'm just going to take it off just to make it easy to do this while we're on camera. So, what you want to do first is, there's actually just a pair of panels here. You just kind of flick up, and that's actually the main bicep. As you can see, it's getting exposed right there. There's some tabs that lock this panel into the wings. You just kind of pull it from back here to start to separate all this stuff. Alright. And as you're doing so, you can also check back here, and there's a tab right here that just goes from the wing into the back of the leg, and this whole thing is just going to flip up. Again, there's another tab right here. It just kind of flips up, back of the leg, and this all comes apart. So you've got, this is the whole arm, and this is just going to come out, and this thing can go back inside and goes flush with the leg. There's actually enough space in this thing for any of the different kinds of hands that it comes with. It has the same hands as the VF-25 and VF-27 toys, although by default they had the little karate chop hands in there. Alright, so as we go to the bottom, what we're going to want to do is just remember to flip out these tiny little tabs. This little tab right here. And this is going to be part of the arm joint. Basically, this locks this part of the shoulder. As you bring it down, it will lock this whole thing together. And this all feels very solid as you're doing it. I don't know if you can hear that, but that's my neighbor's dog. I can't control everything. Anyway, as you continue on, there's just a couple of tabs that are that lock the intakes into the top part of the main fuselage, and just gonna pop these out. One of these is a little tighter than the other one, so I'm actually gonna kind of extend the gearwalk joint as well as we do it. These gearwalk joints are also very tight. This thing is like really solid when it needs to be. Alright, so the next thing you do is you're actually going to pull this out, and there's a tiny little set of tabs in there, and that allows you to maneuver this thing into position. And so this, now when you have it like this doesn't actually lock in place. This is kind of a bummer, but what you can do is you just take, they have these struts that will lock all of this together. And there was a bit of a panic because they didn't show any of these strut thingies until like right before the toy was released in like a demonstration video. So yeah, you don't need this technically. It does help though, so you know, it's kind of up to you if you want to use these things. Gearwalk mode is a little unwieldy without them, so that is up to you. Because what you're going to do now is you're actually going to move the whole hip assembly up, and it actually clicks as it's moving, which is cool. There's actually like a clicking joint in here. And this is similar to like on the VF-25 toys. There's like a little swing bar in there. And so, I don't know how well you can see me doing this. But, yeah. Alright, so you kind of got this in position, and we can stick this like that. You can pull the whole ankle assembly out. It looks like the same assembly as on the VF-25 toy, but it's kind of buried in there, so it's a little hard to see it. Okay, so to finish this off, what we do is we're going to pull this. This whole thing kind of pulls out, and now you got the elbow joint. Put that up a little bit. Alright, now you've got the other elbow joint. There we go. And we just kind of got to clean up the arms a little bit. They actually point this way, and this thing flips over. And there we go. So this is pretty much gearwalk mode, and I'm going to take a break, clean it up, and we'll come back. Alright, here's the YF-30 Chronos in gearwalk mode, and it looks like a really big gearwalk, and it is huge, you know, because in addition to your standard, like, oh, it's got the thigh swivel, this whole joint extends outwards to give you deeper bend. It also gives it a really deep bend like this way, but just watch out the tip here that hits the back of the leg as you're posing it like that. So this thing, you know, can do your gear walk, your standard kind of gear walk A stance pose. It's kind of back heavy, but you know, that's just the nature of the design. So the reason why it has kind of a funky groin here is there's actually a waist joint, just a straight up regular waist joint in here, and so that goes basically, you can go a full 360 degrees. You're really just limited by like how much clearance you can get out of this. And you can just kind of finagle a little more clearance because the hip joints actually have this. You can see there's actually like a pull-out joint in there, so you can really get this all very like wide. So you have like a whole lot of stuff that's just kind of trying to work together, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I feel like the gearwalk mode, as ambitious as it is, it's kind of messy, because it is really cool that you can just do like this with a gearwalk. Never really had their own waist joints before, so that's sort of a first with this. And of course you can always flip up the big missile pod, because in this mode it has the clearance to do so. And again, just a word on the hands, there's all different kinds of hands. There's the standard like articulated finger hands, you get a pair of those, and then just kind of fixed posed gun holding hands, which I'm using here for the weapon. So yeah, I'm gonna have to do a little cut before I show you how this thing goes on the stand. It's not too difficult, it's just that you basically replace this bracket with one that has a stand adapter, a little slot for the stand, and it's really hard to get this thing in and out. That's kind of the problem. So anyway, but again, YF-30 in gearwalk mode. It's big and cool, and this is ambitious. Doesn't quite work, but if you, oops, that plugged in. If you leave it like this, if you lose the this part, it does work a lot better. I kind of wish you didn't need that thing, but that's just kind of how they're doing it here. Alright, before I mess around with the stand adapter, I do want to show that yes, you can actually have this without the bracer part in the back. It's just that, again, this whole groin isn't locking in place, so you're just kind of, it's all about how well you can balance it as you're trying to like maneuver this whole thing around. But again, it's really cool that it does have just a full-on waist joint in there. It's just that this doesn't lock in place. I don't know why they didn't do anything like that in there, but that's kind of what we have to deal with. Okay, so this is the stand adapter. Probably saw me do this before. You just flip up those little panels, and this whole thing is just gonna tab in to the back, and there's actually little tabs up here that go where the legs normally attach in fighter mode. So everything just kind of gets stuck in there, and now you've got both the brace that also lets you plop it up on stand. And you know, it's a standard display stand that all these Bandai Valkyries come with. Again, I did kind of think that you were going to be able to get a little more motion because of the waist joint here, but the stand just kind of blocks a lot of the waist joint. So unfortunately, it's got a display, but it's not as good as it could be. I kind of wish they had maybe put this a little bit farther back so it could still use the waist joint. But yeah, so that's the gearwalk on the display stand. So let's continue on into Batroid mode. Alright, we have the YF-30 in gearwalk mode, and we want to continue on into Batroid mode. And off camera I swapped in the fists and put the intake covers back on just so I could remember to show you them. So I'm going to pop the missile pod off. You can leave this on during the transformation, but it's easy to just kind of leave it off and to the side. So we're going to go down to the underside, and basically what you're going to be doing is taking these front forks here and clicking them into this position, or just unclicking them there. And with the die-cast bar here, it's going to move all the way down, and it actually has kind of a mid position that it's going to click into, like right here. Not all the way for fighter mode, but like this mid position. And you kind of got that arranged. And as it is, you can then flip the nose cone like this, and the whole thing just kind of threads through as you bring all of this. Well, actually you want to bring this in the other direction. And problem is when this is here, you might get the intakes knocking against those front forks, and what you want to do is just kind of pull the intakes out, so now that they have all this space. You're going to arrange it like this, and there is on this side a little flip down fork pair of tabs, and that will all go into place like this. Alright, now let me just take a quick break, and I'm going to show you the trickier parts of this. Okay, so when we're continuing on into Bataroid mode, I found that the easiest thing to do is to kind of start with the head before we go into actually bringing this into position, because it's a little less intuitive than you may think. So with the head, the whole like neck assembly here is going to just come up a little bit, and as you kind of reach under and you push it, there's actually like a pair of little like collar parts, I don't know, just kind of like bits of the side of the neck that are actually going to move up, and they're like little triangular piece. So I mean, you can bring the whole head up itself, but the key here is like bringing this up, and you can kind of see those little parts emerged, and you just kind of want to get this all into position before you continue on doing the upper chest. So what you're going to do is you're going to leave this like this, and you bring it forward like that, and then you go underneath and just flip this forward, the little front end of the chest, because then when you bring this whole thing back, now this is in the proper place, and this will all settle into position. And obviously you can flip the wings back up, kind of mess around with the head to get it in the right position, especially with the head lasers, and just start to straighten things out again for Bataroid mode. And those are some tight Gearwalk mode joints. Anyway, so I'm just going to clean this up because it's basically done, and we'll come back in a little bit. Alright, just to finish off Bataroid mode, all you got to do is just flick these down and arrange these in either of the two main directions that they show you to do them in. And while you're here, you can just kind of flip this back up just to get enough space to put this back on. And we're basically done. This is a YF-30 in Bataroid mode, which definitely makes up for the kind of unwieldy nature of Gearwalk mode, because this thing is now a lot more solid. They do actually, like, you do get these little like brackets. This one's actually for use with the stand, but this is for just normal use. That basically just kind of goes up in here, and I'm not going to show you. Well, I mean, I can kind of show you. I'm not going to attach it, but basically it goes up in here and it keeps everything together, but it stays together by itself. The only thing that I guess is the problem is like this little tail in the end here, like little nose cone tail. That might get loose, but everything else it stays together. I mean, you know, it's not really coming apart at all. And I know actually I said before that you're supposed to put these like in the other position, but they keep clicking forward, so maybe I was wrong before and I'm not reading the directions right. But anyway, you got YF-30 Bataroid mode. It's kind of tall and hard to fit in shot. So yeah, this thing is where all the articulation just kind of comes into play. You got your bicep swivels, your elbows. The elbows actually extend for even more bend. I do that on both sides. You got the lovely free-moving waist joint, which is like butter. Like, this is exactly what you want this to do. And free-moving hip joints, you know, all this stuff. You can pop out this if you want a deeper bend, stuff like that. This thing can actually kneel. I have pictures of it in the text review of it in the sniper pose. But yeah, only problem is you kind of have to deal with the backpack. But despite the fact that it is, you know, top heavy, you know, and it's got this huge thing up there, it carries its weight pretty well, and I'm really kind of happy with how this all turned out. So this is like really good, and I'm glad that they got this model right, because it's very distinctive looking, and probably the highlights of the YF-30 design. So let's just kind of swap out some hands while we got them. And here I'm just putting on the articulated hand, and let's put the hand with the gun back on, just so we can talk about the gun pod itself. So this is an original design for the YF-30, although it's not too different than the ones we've seen before. And you pull it out, the sniper scope comes up, and with the front here, this whole thing splits for the beam cannon mode. You just sort of arrange it with the forks out like it's a big Macross cannon, and try not to like crush the thing back in. And you're moving it like this. So yeah, that's YF-30 with the big beam cannon. So it looks really good. And as you kind of see, you've got the little head lasers. You do get a set of solid plastic ones. I'm using the flexible ones because they tend to get kind of mashed up as you're transforming it. So yeah, that's handy to have the soft plastic ones in there. So yeah, we got ourselves a sharp looking Valkyrie toy, and the head also has a slightly better than average neck joint. It actually can like wiggle side to side as well as rotate. Basically there's a ball joint and a little double hinge in there, so I can kind of move all the way around, stuff like that. So yeah, YF-30 battery mode. This is like great. And I messed up the gun. Anyway, this is like freaking great. This is amazing. I really like this. I think when you do the battery mode, it's just awesome. So yeah. So I'm gonna take a little break, and we'll do some conclusions, and also show you how you get this darn thing on the stand. It's a little tricky. Alright, so let's talk about getting the YF-30 up on the display stand. So you basically have a two-piece adapter, and this is another one of those brackets that just sort of holds up the tail fin for battery mode and helps secure things. There's a tiny tab that will line up the slot in here, and then this all goes together. Actually, it's really hard to do this, and in the end this all is kind of unnecessary, at least this whole bracket part, because you know you do get it in there eventually. You feel like you're about to break the whole thing in the process, but what actually happens is you're just gonna put this by hooking the tail will actually or the nose cone will stick out like right through this little hole, and as it goes in there, you know, you just kind of hook it up in there, and there's the little tiny spot for the tail fin. The little tabs here are going to go up into the slots that are still here. You might remember from where we had the canopy like lock in. And yeah, this whole thing does come together. I actually found that if you don't have this little tab this bracket right in here, you can actually just get this to kind of lock in here a lot more cleanly. And that's what I did in the text review. But anyway, you have this huge cradle underneath here, and just bring out the stand, and the whole thing goes in there. And now it's up on the stand. Plastic stand that makes squeaks on the table. Anyway, so yeah, there it is up on the stand, looking pretty good. And I just want to show you real quick. This is a cool, more of an Easter egg. If you have one of the knives from the YF-25, you can use it because it has the same hands with the YF-30. In the game, it does have a knife when it's doing melee attacks. The toy does not actually come with the knife, though. I think that's because they never established where the knife actually stores on the thing, so they just decided to leave it off the toy. But if, again, you have the other toys, you can at least have the knife as per in the game. So, anyway, YF-30. Altogether, in conclusion, I'm mostly happy with it. I mean, the battle mode is great. The fighter mode is good. It does pretty much what it does in the game, although you do have to like take off the missile pod before you flick it up into deployed position. It's a very unique looking Valkyrie, just because of like this huge thing up here that's supposed to kind of look like the old Zentradi battle pods that had the missiles up top. I'm a fan of the game. I really like this design. The toy, it feels really good in battle raid mode, and again in fighter mode. Gearwalk mode, it's a little too ambitious. They bit off more than they could chew with that. It's a cool idea. If you can get it to work, it works pretty well, but it's kind of just unwieldy and maybe it doesn't want to stand up sometimes. But again, this is cool. I like the battle raid mode. I think that's my main thing. It's just very, very clean battle raid mode, even though all the stuff kind of ends up on the back. But it's really cool. You don't even notice the stuff. It just looks like it's part of the design. But yeah, this guy, he's like $200. Pre-orders were a little rough, but it seems like there's still some floating around there. And yeah, if you like this, if you're a fan of the game, I think it's worth owning. It's still not quite as perfect as it could be, but it is really, really good. And I think that's what you should take away from this review. This is a really good toy. It's a new Valkyrie, so there were some teething problems. But in the end, good. Really good toy. I liked it. Anyway, this has been Andrew for CollectionDX.com. Hopefully they'll do more repaints of this in the future. I don't know. Again, there weren't that many in the game, and they weren't that exciting, so we'll have to see. We will have to see.